Some guys come into the NFL as one type of player and it just doesn't work. The tools are there,
That's true.
but something about the position doesn't translate.
NFL
And
is
the crazy
rookies.
part is that a lot of those guys don't get second chances either.
That's
Their
true.
careers just kind of end.
That's
But
true.
some
Tavon
do get
Austin.
the second chance. Some players get moved and become something completely different than what everybody expected. So in today's
He's
video, we're
elite.
looking at a few players who came into this league as one thing and left it as something else entirely.
I'll be honest, when it comes to players like that come in as one position and go to something entirely and still make something of it, these are the few, the proud, the Marines. Because it ain't too many people that's doing that and sustaining a long career, like switching positions.
These guys switched positions altogether, while others kept the same job title but became a completely different player at that position. Which brings us to
Right.
Lamar Jackson and Steve Young as the first two.
Steve Young is definitely that guy. They don't talk about him. He's that guy.
Now let's get one thing straight. Steve Young's start in Tampa Bay was about as bad as it could get for a young quarterback. Bad team
Okay.
around him, with the interceptions also piling up on him fast. I mean, just looking at the tape too, he was running for his life behind an offensive line that couldn't give him a second of protection. Really, just
Yeah,
watching those
especially
early
back in the
years,
day.
you'd never guess that this guy ends up in the Hall of Fame. He honestly looked exactly like what the critics said he was, a track star who couldn't read a defense. But then the trade to San Francisco changed everything.
Yeah, he
Young
plugged up with
landed
Jerry
behind
Rice.
Joe Montana, which meant sitting and waiting his turn. And the crazy part about that too is that that's usually not a career booster for a young player. But
You know
instead,
what's crazy? It can be a career booster because you're sitting behind one of the greats, like Steve Young sat behind Joe Montana. Joe Montana. Shout out to Joe Montana. You know what I'm saying? Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre, but Jordan Love also sat behind Aaron Rodgers, and he didn't get a lick of that talent. No playoff wins, no NFC championships, nothing. No, not even an NFC North champion. Nothing.
Steve's case, it turned out to be probably the best thing that could have happened in his career. He learned patience and studied exactly how Bill Walsh's offense actually wanted a quarterback to operate instead of forcing his way onto the field. What really changed was his approach to the game. Young stopped relying purely on his legs to bail him out, and he turned himself into a pocket passer, someone who could fully go through his progressions, sit in the pocket under pressure, and still have the wheels to create plays when the play broke down. He didn't stop scrambling, he just stopped needing it. And I mean, the payoff speaks for itself too. MVP seasons, a Super Bowl
Yeah.
where he threw 6 touchdown passes, still
Gotta
a
love
record,
it.
and first ballot Hall of Fame numbers by the time he walked away. The
Gotta
guy
love
who
it.
looked like a bust in Tampa Bay became one of the most efficient quarterbacks
That's why we gotta
to
blame
ever
coaches
play the
more.
position. And when he retired with the highest passer rating in NFL history, all of that happened because of how he changed and how he saw his own game and then adjusted it. Now looking at Lamar Jackson 2, we're basically watching the
Lamar!
exact same story happen in real time.
Lamarvelous!
Jackson came into the league as a pure running quarterback, and some even asked him to try out as a wide receiver during the combine. His first MVP season was built almost entirely on his legs, over 1,200 rushing yards, breaking Michael Vick's single season record in the process, which is just absurd rushing numbers for the quarterback
still doing
position.
good passes,
But
though.
with that production came noise, and it was constant noise. He'd never be a real pocket passer. He was a gadget guy wearing a starting quarterback's number.
Right.
And some even said only half jokingly that he'd be better as a running back. But watching what's
No.
happened since has been nothing short of
No.
a miracle. Lamar has gradually
Even, and you know
reshaped
what's
his
crazy? Even during that season, he still had good passing numbers. He has one of the best career passing percentages of all time. He's one of the best game, like in-game passing percentages of all time as well. Check the stats on that. That MVP was definitely because he was running, but you know why he was able to run so much? Because he was throwing his ass off. You know, I just never like people try to say Josh Allen's a better passer than Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen has a better deep throw. That's about it. He had a better deep ball. That's it, literally.
game, and he stays in the pocket longer now instead of bailing at the first sign of pressure. He climbs up into throwing lanes instead of running to the sideline. In the 25-yard sprints that used to define his tape, he's cut them down. In his second MVP season, he threw well over 3,500 yards with a
Gotta love
touchdown to interception ratio that pocket passers would sign up for immediately. Not
Gotta
only
love
that
it.
too, but he came back even better in his underrated 2024 season, and he's not the same
didn't
quarterback
win
who won
MVP.
his first MVP running wild through defenses. Lamar has now become a passer who happens also to be the most dangerous runner at his position. Put the two side by side and the comparison writes itself.
NFL
Steve
Hall
went
of
from a
Famer.
scrambler desperately trying to force pocket passing to work to a passer who could scramble only when he needed to. Lamar, he's making that same jump just on a modern timeline with modern scrutiny. The difference in Young's story is finished. Jackson's transformation is still happening right in front of us, and we don't get to skip to the ending yet. But
Right.
as a QB, there were a few quarterbacks who did have to switch up to wide receiver to last in the NFL.
Edelman.
One even being a future Super Bowl MVP.
Edelman.
Julian Edelman ran a dual threat offense at Kent State, and the numbers, they were pretty solid, but nothing too crazy. His final stat line, he threw for over 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns, so
Yeah, nothing wild.
not really the
Nothing
kind
wild.
of stat line that usually gets a quarterback some pro attention. And the fact too that Edelman was 5'9" on a good day, and NFL teams simply weren't going to look at him as a passer. It doesn't matter how good the college tape is when size like that closes
Especially
the door
at
before
Kent
the
State, no
conversation
offense,
can
brother.
even start. So just because they wanted to, the Patriots took him in the 7th round in 2009, and there was really no question about why. He was there to become a receiver, full stop. But the early years, actually surprisingly, were pretty rough. Minimal production while being buried on the depth chart. And I mean, his best role was as a punt returner while he tried to learn a completely new position from scratch.
You gotta learn. Not only are you learning a completely new position, but it's not like you're moving from quarterback to wide receiver on your own team. That is easy because you already know the plays, so you know everything. Like, you're still good. Now it's really simpler on you because you don't have to know what everybody's doing. You know what you're doing. Now, when you go from college to NFL, from quarterback to receiver, you gotta learn all this new terminology and learn how to run routes correctly and do all this crazy stuff and work on your burst, work on your speed. It gets harder. Especially when, you know, oh my God, he still got to do punt, still got to do special teams.
This wasn't a guy who looked like a future Patriots legend in year 2 or 3. He
Disgusting.
looked like organizational depth. What eventually made it work, though, was something you can't really coach into a player. Edelman thought like a quarterback even after he stopped being one. He understood coverages and defensive rotations before most receivers around him ever would, because he'd spent his whole entire football life reading exactly that from the other side of the ball. That kind of football IQ took time to translate into route running, but once it did, it became a separator. By 2013, It all just clicked. Julian caught over 100 passes that season and turned into Tom Brady's most trusted target on 3rd down, which isn't a small role in that offense. That's the guy who keeps drives alive. And then came his signature moment. He was named the Super Bowl MVP, and if you watch that game, he was the most reliable option on the field in the biggest game of the year. Reception after
Real question: do you think Julian Edelman is a Hall of Famer? No rage bait. Because honestly, he can't be. Because if you can put Edelman in and you don't put some of these other receivers in, it's gonna get spooky in the Hall of Fame. So Edelman, unfortunately, cannot go. I love Edelman though, no Diddy, but he can't go in if some of these other receivers don't go in too.
reception in exactly the spots where Brady needed somebody who wouldn't blink. By the time he was done, Edelman had 3 championships, over 600 catches, and one of the best postseason resumes any receiver in the NFL has ever put together. All of it built by a guy the NFL never once considered at his original position. He changed positions completely and made it work. Our next player, though, did switch spots on the field exactly like Julian, and he also did have a Super Bowl moment, though he didn't win MVP for it. Antwaan Randall El ran the show at Indiana as a true dual threat option quarterback. By the time he was done, he'd thrown for over 7,400 passing yards and rushed for almost 3,900 more, and those are Heisman finalist type of numbers on a team that honestly wasn't very good. But I mean, honestly, this guy could do everything on the football field if you asked him to. However, Randall El was 5'10", and again, no matter how good he looked in college, NFL teams were not going to hand a starting quarterback job to somebody that short. But this is the part that separates Randall El from a lot of other guys on this list. He didn't wait for a team to tell him to switch. He started preparing for receiver before the draft even happened, running routes and getting reps on the jugs machines. I mean, he saw the writing on the wall, and instead of fighting it, he totally leaned into it. So the Steelers drafted him in the 2nd round of 2002, and it wasn't as a quarterback. It was as a receiver and a returner from day one. No arguing about it, no trying to prove he could still sling it around. He showed up ready to be a different kind of player than the one college fans knew. And the transition, it worked. Randall El became a real functional NFL wide receiver, and on top of that, he turned into one of the better punt returners in the league at the time too, good enough to even earn a first-team All-Pro honors as a returner. And then came Super Bowl XL, where Randall El took a reverse, planted his feet, and threw a touchdown pass to Hines Ward to help seal the win for Pittsburgh. To this day, that's still the only touchdown pass ever thrown by a wide receiver in Super Bowl history. He was a former college quarterback closing out one of the biggest games of his career, doing the one thing everybody said he couldn't at the next level, throw a football that mattered. Randall L made the jump because he was
sometimes you do have to make adjustments though. Like sometimes you gotta be hard headed, sometimes you have to make adjustments. It's all about knowing who you are and having some solid people around you giving some good advice too. But you gotta know who you are. Like if you're that guy, no questions. You know what I'm saying? Lamar Jackson was that guy. Steve Young was that guy. But if you're someone like Anton Randall or you're someone like Julian Edelman, it might be better for you to switch. He's got to know, are you Anton Randall or are you Lamar Jackson? He's got to know as a person.